You're listening to the Listen Up Show 031 Startup Entrepreneur Podcast. I'm Mitchell Chadro, your host. On today's show, we're speaking with Nick Delmonico. He's a CPA, CEO of Strados Labs, a smart asthma management company, and he's also an MBA candidate at the Fox Business School at Temple University. Listen up, trusted friends. It's your business, it's your family, it's your life. Now let's get started. Please sign up to my email list for the latest special offers exclusive for our Listen Up Show Startup Entrepreneur Podcast audience at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. I have been providing business advice, resources, and help to entrepreneurs for over 20 years, and I'm looking forward to helping all of you. Sign up for my email list, again, at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. I will provide you with full transcripts for each interview, my ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, the Startup Checklist, and many other education and training materials, all back at mitchellchadro.com/sign up. What will we discuss on today's show? Nick's company is actually developing a provisional patent for wearable technology to manage asthma. We'll talk to Nick about his own personal story, his background, and what he's actually doing to help people, why he actually got into the business of asthma management. And it really is all about solving problems, not just coming up with rock star ideas. And now, on to our show. Nicholas, it's great to have you on the show today. Can you tell us a little bit about your personal story? Tell us a little bit about, your background and how it actually ties into what you're doing with the business today to help people?
Sure thing, and thanks for having me on the show. So I guess to start off, really why I got into this space, I myself am an asthmatic, and I've had asthma really my entire life. Especially when I was a kid, it was something that really impacted me. It was hard for me to manage. I ended up at the nurse's office dozens of times and even in the hospital on one occasion. So it was something I always dealt with. I was fortunate enough, actually, as I got older to be able to manage it a little bit better, played sports throughout high school and still and pretty active today. But when I started my grad school, my MBA in healthcare, I started thinking about healthcare problems and how to solve them with these new technologies that come out in wearable devices and drones and all these things. And so I thought of, how do you help people who have asthma better manage themselves through wearable technology? So that's sort of where the idea stemmed from.
So the idea that you actually came up with was, okay, how can I actually solve this particular problem that's out there? And it obviously hit close to home because you obviously grew up with asthma, and that's how you said, gee, this might be something that I want to kind of look into, correct?
Exactly.
So tell us a little bit about, the people that surround your team, because I know that you have a CPA background. You're currently getting an MBA at the Fox Business School here locally here at Temple University, which is where I went to undergraduate. So can you tell me a little bit about your team and how you sort of came together?
Yeah, so our team now is consistent of myself, and I'm the CEO, and I run the business operations. But we have a biomedical engineer as an undergrad, but now he's actually a neurologist at Jefferson Hospital, and so he is the lead technologist on our team today. And we also have a MD, PhD student who did biomedical engineering at Johns Hopkins. She's helping with a lot of our software development as well, and our engineering from a hardware side. And the way we actually met was through a health hackathon that Jefferson University Hospital put together last year. They do it every year. It's called the Health Hack, and essentially it's co-sponsored by Independence Blue Cross and some other health technology companies in the Philly region. And it's a way for people who are interested in solving healthcare problems to use technology to do that. So it's much like any other hackathon, but the premise is really all around healthcare. I was fortunate enough to go there and pitch my problem, and I was an asthmatic, and I said, well, how do we help people better understand their signs and symptoms using technology, using wearable technology? And I was fortunate enough to meet a few other people, but including my two co-founders now, who said, hey, we've got some ideas, let's throw that around. And we spent the weekend doing some, real rough hacking type of work on trying to make prototypes and then pitch that prototype to some of the investors and to the judges.
Tell us a little bit about the actual prototype itself. I mean, obviously, when you start out, you might have one thing in mind, and then you pivot or you change as you kind of go along. Can you talk to us a little bit about those changes you've made, and talk to us a little bit about who those end users are or who your targeting is for this particular product or solution or service that you have?
Sure. And, yeah, I would say iteration has been really a key thing for us and learning how to pivot quickly. Our first iteration, actually, we were trying to do it in the form of a necklace, and we wanted it to be this, piece of jewelry that somebody would wear, and then it would be pretty inconspicuous that it was also helping you monitor and manage sounds of your lungs for the purposes of improving asthma management. And through some surveys that we did with potential end users, we actually did some online surveys of asthma communities, and we did some in-person interviews with folks. People liked the idea, but were kind of nervous about whether or not it would actually work because, do you have to keep the jewelry clean, and how does it actually adhere to your chest or skin enough to really get the data that you needed? We did some testing, realized that probably wasn't the best route for us to go. So then we iterated into looking at more of a integrated into essentially a sports bra or a chest strap, and we've now iterated into more of a patch-like form. So the process of iteration has been interesting because we've been trying to leverage our end users, our potential end users, as much as possible as we're coming up with our rapid prototyping.
The show has three main sponsors. HostGator will sponsor our startup round. I use HostGator to host all of my websites, so check out the special offer exclusive to my podcast audience and get 25% off your web hosting package today at mitchellchadro.com/HostGator. Audible, an Amazon company, sponsors our Fast Pitch, my book club recommendations, back at mitchellchadro.com/audible. Snappa sponsors our wrap-up round. For all my graphic design needs, I was so impressed with this company that I actually interviewed the founder, Christopher Gimmer, on our show 28, back at mitchellchadro.com/show028. But to start your Snappa design graphic today, go on over to mitchellchadro.com/Snappa. Now, when the team comes together, everybody has their strengths, and obviously with your CPA background, with a finance background, accounting background, business background, it sounds as if you obviously have other people on the team that have medical backgrounds as far as that goes. But as far as the actual patent or technology, have you looked into, how you're actually, going to either patent this technology or the cost that's involved and sort of raising money or funds? I mean, what is your goal in that regard?
Yeah, and we were actually fortunate enough to win as part of one of our business competitions that we competed in the spring, the ability to work with a patent attorney in the Philadelphia area. And really, as a pro bono service, they helped us develop a provisional patent application.
Now, is that through the Temple University resources, or is that through? Can you talk to us a little bit about the resources, because there's a lot of people in the audience who either have a prototype, they want to start up, they don't exactly know how the patent technology works in terms of what you can actually say about it, and having those resources, I think that would be very helpful for other people to learn a little bit about what you're doing to sort of leverage the resources that are available to you.
Sure. And yeah, so I'll speak to a few of the avenues that we tried and then where we ended up actually getting resources from. So we knew very early on that we would need to start thinking about intellectual property and how to patent potentially this technology, both the hardware and even the software. And we actually tried to leverage the Drexel University Law Club, essentially. They have this entrepreneurial-based law club where they'll actually take on early-stage startups, and if they like the ideas and they're in areas that they're interested in learning more about from a legal perspective, they'll take them on as a quote-unquote client, although it's really pro bono work. Unfortunately, we weren't able to pair with some lawyers who were interested in the stuff we really needed most help with, which were kind of these FDA, Federal Food and Drug Administrative focused technologies. So we didn't end up using those resources, but we were fortunate enough as part of the Temple Institute of Entrepreneurship and Innovation. We won a business competition that they do every spring, or actually, well, we were a finalist. And as part of that, they got us in touch with a local patent attorney who does pro bono work, and it's sponsored by the Innovation Center at Temple.
Yeah, so I want to be able to link up with all the resources that we talk about on the show today. As far as then the law club over at Drexel, what was the exact name of that club, and who were you in contact with? And then also, as it relates to the Innovation Club here at Temple University, who did you work with so that we can link up to that?
So let me get the Drexel one. It was the Drexel Law Clinic.
Now, is that through the closed school with entrepreneurship, or is that through the law school?
It's through the law school.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. And I can link up. I can certainly link up to that as well. As far as the Innovation Center at Temple University, what is that exactly called, and who were you in contact with there in the law firm?
Sure. So it's the innovation space is the Temple Institute of Entrepreneurship and Innovation, so Temple IEI as it's called, and that space actually sits in the strategy and entrepreneurship department at Temple University. And they are the sponsor for what's called the Be Your Own Boss Bowl competition. And they've been doing that competition for about 10 years now, maybe a little bit longer. And as part of that major competition where they're providing cash prizes to finalists, they also have these in-kind prizes, and they have relationships with several of the entrepreneurial networks in the area. So they do some work with Ben Franklin Technology Partners as it relates to, prototype development work and getting in touch with potential device developers. Next Fab is a manufacturer and co-working space in Philly, and then the law firm that we work with is Caesar Revise, and they are an intellectual property law firm in Philadelphia. They are essentially one of the partner law firms that works with the Temple Be Your Own Boss Bowl. So as part of the finalists, people who are really folks who need that intellectual property help, they'll do it for free or as a pro bono service.
And then, so instead of having a cash gift or a cash prize for this bowl that you were in, that you obviously came in second, because I actually went onto the Temple University website and I actually saw that there's no cash prize, but it sounds as if what they do is they package all of these resources together for you, basically in one bucket, so that you can utilize them and leverage all of those resources for you right there at Temple University, correct? Exactly.
And so they do actually, as part of the finalists, and you'll see they have the 3 tracks. They have undergrad, they have graduate and faculty, and then they have this social impact. If you become a finalist in any of those tracks, you do receive some level of cash. I think it's anywhere between $5,000 and $20,000. And then you can win the grand prize throughout all the tracks. And actually the company that beat us in our track won the entire thing. And it was, interestingly enough, one of my professors at the university. So I couldn't beat the student could not beat the teacher, unfortunately. But
yeah, right. Isn't that something? That's quite interesting. So who is your contact then at Temple University who actually runs this particular program? Because it sounds like as an MBA student that there's a lot of resources for you right there on the campus.
Oh, absolutely. So the director of the program is Ellen Weber, and so she runs the Temple IEI, and she's affiliated with some of the other venture capital firms in the Philadelphia region as well. So she does some work for Robin Hood Ventures and Mid-Atlantic Diamond Ventures as well. So she does a good job of really trying to integrate, especially Temple University's innovations and startups with the broader Philadelphia area. As it relates to getting venture capital, which is really nice.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit about your personal story. We talked about how you actually got interested in this particular idea. I do want to do a little bit more of a deeper dive into the prototype and the patent. So have you actually filed a patent? And can you talk to us a little bit more specifically about these end users and how you're actually going to get this technology, distributed into their, to them? How do you plan on selling this? How do you plan on distributing it? Maybe tell us a little bit more about that, and maybe we can go a little bit deeper.
Sure thing. Yeah, so we will have a provisional patent filed by the end of this year. So we've been in the process now for the last few weeks and months iterating our provisional patent application. And for people who aren't really aware of how it works, and I certainly wasn't before I started, typically you'll submit what's called a provisional patent to the patent office, and that allows you to have 12 months after your provisional patent is filed to attach the end claims to your patent. So it's a document that really gives you that first to file right in the United States as far as innovations are concerned, and it essentially just says that, well, if somebody else came up with a similar technology, you filed it first, and therefore you own those rights. So we'll have that done hopefully by the end of this year, which is the end goal. And then we'll spend the next 12 months really finalizing and iterating our final hardware and software algorithms and our device. And after that, we will file what will be our final patent application.
Now, has the law firm told you exactly how you can sort of discuss the provisional patent? So, for example, we had this interview today in terms of just making sure that you're not disclosing too much information, yet obviously you can talk generally about what the company's doing, and have they sort of skilled you on that of what can and cannot be said or disseminated?
Yeah, they've given us a little bit of information about what we can and cannot say. And again, a lot of that also comes to what it is that we believe is proprietary to us that we're trying to keep, internal versus what we do want the public to know at this point. So for example, we do want the public to know that we are developing a wearable technology and a software connected device for the purposes of asthma management. Now, as far as the specifics of how we define our sound capture or anything like that, we try and keep that as private as possible at this point.
As far as management goes, I mean, obviously that's a fairly broad subject matter as it relates to what aspect of the management, because, we talk to our entrepreneurs, our startups about having focus, not taking on more than they can do. And so what is your specialized niche within the asthma management? That could be a very undaunting endeavor in terms of it being very broad. So have you narrowed your focus in terms of what that is? And if so, well, what have you decided to sort of focus on, and maybe let us know a little bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. So, and you're absolutely right. And we've gone through that process, and it is still a challenge for us to make sure that we're always really focused on what's the most key value for us today that will help those end users better manage their asthma. And what is it that we will provide them that's something that they don't already have from other means? So for us, we're really focused on, how is it that by wearing the device, you get information that you otherwise would not have had that helps improve the way that you manage your asthma. So, for example, a survey was done by the CDC, the Center for Disease Control, a few years ago, that's essentially evidence that 50% of pediatric and adult asthmatics have a hard time identifying the signs and symptoms of an asthma attack. And the most prevalent sign of an asthma attack is wheezing. And it's almost counterintuitive to think about. You would say to yourself, well, if I'm wheezing, I know there's a problem. But a lot of people, those wheezing sounds, they come on really, really slowly, and they start in your lungs before they're even auditory. And also, you try as an individual to get over those signs and symptoms through your own, through really your own will. And so a lot of times, although people are in fact wheezing or coughing, they're not doing anything about it. So our focus is, well, let's help identify those signs, the sound of wheezing, the sound of coughing, and alert people that it's happening. Now we're not diagnostic, so we're not trying to explain that it's, a specific type of wheeze or cough, or that it's, specifically asthma, but we're trying to alert somebody that something is happening in their body. So that sends a message directly to the phone, and the phone will give a message either to the individual or also to a caregiver or a parent of an asthmatic. So it's to try and alert people more quickly of what's happening so that they can manage and do what the physician says, which is typically, take an inhaler, stop exercising, breathe deeply and calmly and things like that. So that's really our key focus is making sure that we have this alerting and monitoring system, and then giving individuals the ability to track and monitor on the back end. But our primary focus now is really that front end alerting system.
The reason why I actually chose HostGator to sponsor my startup round was because students, business owners, those individuals out there who want to start up something new, they need a presence online, and they need a web hosting company that they can trust and they can count on, and that's reliable and helpful. So what did I do? I teamed up with the good folks at HostGator, where they offer my podcast audience 25% off their web hosting package. Check them out at mitchellchadro.com/HostGator. That's mitchellchadro.com/HostGator. Start your plan today. As far as then market research, because we've touched on that just very briefly, how are you targeting these users? How are you sort of bringing them in to sort of do the research, to test what it is? I mean, right now I know that you're in the process of filing the provisional patent, and it's in the infant stages as far as that goes. But have you given some thought as to how you're actually going to test this and continue to iterate, from that perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've done, as far as market surveys, to try and validate that there is in fact a market. We know from secondary research, there's a lot of white papers that have come out over the last few years about how asthma needs to be better managed, and that actually 2/3 of asthma attacks can be prevented through better management. So it's not even better medications. And in fact, a lot of these papers say medications, we've really reached the pinnacle as far as a lot of these asthma things, unless you can find a way to cure it. So it's really about this management. So what we've been focused on as far as market research is, targeting asthmatics overall. So we've actually gone through online forums, as I mentioned earlier, so asthma communities through Reddit, through the America Asthma Foundation, and then the AAAI, which is Asthma and Allergy Institute, and essentially just reaching out and saying, hey, for me, I was saying, hey, I'm an MBA student. I'm interested in healthcare. I'm an asthmatic myself, looking to get some feedback about, your asthma, if you have it, and, take this quick survey. So we did some real quick kind of dirty online surveys and actually gave us some pretty good information that validated a lot of what we had seen. And we got a lot of good qualitative information where people would write in and talk a little bit about their condition. So there was certainly validation that people had a hard time managing it and were interested in some sort of technology that would enable them to better manage their disease. So that's where we started. And then we've actually had the opportunity to work with an asthma researcher in New York who's been interested in actually understanding how environment impacts asthmatics and whether or not a technology would improve access to care and also management of asthma. And so we're in the process now of collaborating with them and doing focus groups with some of the patients at a hospital up in Harlem, where, again, this is pre-testing phase, but we're trying to see, what it is that somebody would really want in the technology, starting to give them photos of what we have as renderings for the prototype, and trying to take that feedback early before we really develop it fully for testing purposes.
So,
and the end goal is to use it for testing.
With any new startup, especially one where, you're filing a provisional patent and you have all these other types of challenges, talk to us a little bit about some of the challenging moments that you've been facing, as a business leader, as a new entrepreneur with this startup.
So the big thing that comes to mind for me as far as challenge, aside from entering a high barrier to entry, high capital intensive, high regulatory type of space, which has been a challenge, but more of a fun challenge, managing individuals. So managing the team, has been a challenge, but something that is really validating when it goes well. So our team, I have a neurologist. He's a full-time neurologist, so he does a lot of this kind of as a moonlight or weekend, work endeavor. And I was actually in California for the summer, so we had to do a lot of our meetings. We had to find the right times that would work for both of us, but then we also had to do it as a part-time endeavor. So it was challenging to make sure that we were on the same page and communicating effectively over the course of the summer, and really getting things done quickly. So that's been a major challenge for me, is finding the right people and managing the work streams so that, we can get things done efficiently and effectively, but also still maintain kind of our full-time other jobs while we're trying to develop the product.
Yeah, no, certainly. So what one thing then contributes most to your success up to this point? I
would say, at least now, the relationship that I have with my co-founders. He's a neurologist by trade, but he actually did some work for a pharmaceutical management consulting company right out of college. So he understands how business works enough. He really lets me take the reins as far as like business development and being the face of the company, but he makes things really easy for me because he wants to communicate. He wants me to, pick up the phone and call him and, just run ideas by him to make sure that he's on the same page as me. He loves to play the devil's advocate, because I sort of have my head in the cloud sometimes, thinking about all the positive and all the great things that we can do, and, trying to push things through really quickly to move forward. And he always makes sure that we take a step back and, really think about all of the opportunities and threats that exist in those decisions. It's something I do as well, but I play the side of trying to pull him along. So it's a good push and pull kind of thing that we have going. Yeah, one of the most important things is new business development and how you're actually going to sort of bring in sales, your distribution channels, and obviously we're extremely early in your startup, but you obviously would start to think about some of these things and how you're going to build it out going into the future. So can you talk to us a little bit about your strategy as far as what you're going to be doing in that space and then raising that type of money in order to achieve that? Sure. Yeah. And so that's been an interesting area for us as well, is we've not only have we pivoted our design, but we've also really pivoted how we want to approach commercialization and our go-to-market strategy. So we originally really wanted to focus on insurance reimbursement for the device as part of an asthma management program. So, that's our long-term goal now. But the vision is, if you have somebody who goes to the hospital for asthma once a year, the average cost of that just to be in the ER is about $2,500. And if they get admitted, it can be over $20,000. So our thought process is, well, a device that's $150 that would reduce the risk of hospitalization by, say, 50%, it's a pretty good return on investment, right? So we wanted to go directly into kind of an insurance process to say, for all your high-risk patients, high-utilizing patients, if you give them the PulmoWare device and solution, reduce their risk of asthma attack, you'll actually save money as well as reduce the risk of hospitalization and potential death. So it's really an economic and also a social win. So are you saying that your end user ultimately might be the insurance companies who are reimbursing the patients who are obviously using this particular device for managing their asthma? Correct. So we wanted it to go through the insurance company and really be something that's promoted by the physician. So the physician would see an asthmatic. They would say, okay, you've been having a hard time managing, you've gone to the hospital. As part of your asthma action plan, as part of your management plan, we will provide you, and it'll be reimbursed by insurance, PulmoWare. So please use the PulmoWare system. Send me updates about how your health is improving or how it's changing, and it'll be and really a reimbursed process through which the end user is not necessarily the person who purchases. So how are you going to reach out to, whether it be the doctors, the insurance companies? I mean, obviously we're talking about building out
some type of a sales force, a new business development force to obviously get the word out. I mean, obviously doing interviews like this is certainly going to help. You're developing your social media strategy, which we'll talk to you about in a minute. But what have you started doing or thinking about in terms of that?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And one of the things that we've been trying to focus on primarily now is building those relationships with folks who are in insurance, in the insurance area or in areas that also work in the insurance space. So we've been discussing with a health technology company that does a lot of work with Medicaid, and specifically managing chronic diseases in Medicaid, where they're actually pushing messaging to patients who say, for example, are pregnant and they're not going and seeing their prenatal, getting their prenatal medications. They're not doing all of their appointments. The messaging system was enabling them to give them reminders about their prenatal medications, their appointments, et cetera, and they actually improved health by getting people to be more engaged with their pregnancy process. So they understand kind of where we're coming from a chronic disease perspective. So we've been trying to work with them to see if there's a way for us to leverage our device through a very similar channel that they have, which is partnering with health systems and insurance companies to reimburse the product and then use that for improved chronic disease management for asthmatics. So we've gone down that route of trying to figure out how it is that they got to market, how it is that they put a product out there that an insurance company understands the value of, and also getting in front of insurance companies as well. So that's one of the things in Philly that we've been trying to do through some of these innovation partnerships and programs. And I had the opportunity to speak at a hackathon that was sponsored by Independence Blue Cross, and I was sort of the advocate for asthma management. So getting in touch with those folks, showing them a little bit about how our product works, and then ultimately trying to build a relationship with them to figure out even how do we build the product in a way that benefits them as the potential purchaser and making sure that they get the value that they think is best for this type of service.
You know, there's so many student entrepreneurs out there, people that are obviously starting up. They have an idea. Maybe they haven't decided to go forward with it. And so one of the other reasons why I wanted to definitely have you on is that there are a lot of people out there who do, in fact, want to start up, but they don't know how to begin or where to begin, or sometimes it can be very overwhelming. And so what do you think are some of the most common mistakes that other startups or entrepreneurs or students who are actually interested in business are doing that are actually having them delay or is preventing them from beginning or to start on their road to success?
Yeah, that's a great question. And, I'll admit I'm not one of those people who was an entrepreneur at 15. I was looking at some of the other radio interviews that you had, and there's a lot of people some people have been doing it forever, and they've just been entrepreneurial since birth. I've had probably hints of it myself. I did tutoring in college. I thought that was really fun. I liked kind of making my own client base and building my own business there. Always had it a little bit simmering in the back of my mind about being an entrepreneur. Trying to be my own boss was always a cool idea. But I think the thing that hindered me the most, which is probably something that others feel the same way about, is trying to come up with a rock star idea. Everybody will, think about what's the best idea, and if they don't think the idea is great, then they stop immediately, or they just don't continue to pursue it. And what I realized for me is it wasn't the idea, because the idea has changed so much, even over the last year. It's the problem. I think focusing on what the problems are, finding unmet needs in markets, taking things from your own personal experience as things that you would like to see improvement upon, and starting there is a really, really powerful thing, because I don't believe I ever would have started this endeavor if I didn't have a good problem that I really wanted to face and solve. So, and I know more about the problem than I still do about the solution, and we're trying to take all of the inputs into developing that great idea. So I would say it's probably that. I think it's focusing on problems rather than ideas would be really powerful for new entrepreneurs.
That's terrific. What are some of then I know we've talked about the idea and how that could be a challenge, but what are some of the other recurring themes that you can experience, that you can impart on other aspiring entrepreneurs, that you can actually summarize for their benefit, because they are looking for that help, those resources to start up, to grow their business, and to get that experience to take the next step. So can you maybe summarize some of those recurring themes that you're seeing, and then maybe offer some help or some resources there for other listeners?
Yeah, I think another recurring theme for me, and again, I'm fairly new to being an entrepreneur. I was impressed and amazed by the amount of people who are here to help. So even if you're not in school now, I'm fortunate enough to be part of an MBA program in a university that has a top-ranked entrepreneurial program. So there's a lot of resources out there for me. But even if you're not in school now, the Philadelphia region, for example, has just an amazing amount of meetups and networking events where you can just go meet other people who are in the space and talk to them about ideas. And where do you go? Where do you go for that? So I go to Philly Startup Leaders. They're fairly new. They're right in Center City, and so Philly Startup Leaders is really good. New Tech Meetup is pretty good. Philly New Tech Meetup, and I just leverage a lot through Temple University. So I do the entrepreneurship network there. They had a summer studio, which was really kind of like a mini incubator program that they did. So I've been leveraging that as much as I possibly can, and then really just reaching out to people that who are in entrepreneurship. So my roommate was fortunate enough to get a job at a new company down in the Navy Yard, and the CEO of that company went to Delaware with me, and he started an engineering company, so there's a lot of intellectual property issues, a lot of hardware. It's hard to sell the idea of creating things now versus creating apps. I was actually told once, people want to invest in electrons, not atoms. It's funny that you should say that, because we had asked you the question, okay, what are some of the challenges that you're facing? And it's interesting because we've had a number of people on who not only are in the process of and have already developed apps, but actually companies that actually help entrepreneurs do just that. And so having you on is exciting because it's developing things. And it's a little bit outside the app norm, if you will, and so this has been great. But that's an interesting point that you raise. Yeah, and that's actually probably a challenge that I didn't highlight as much, but it's certainly a challenge for us. Is we go to investor meetings and we show them our prototypes and we show them our development work. But there's still major technology risk related to getting it to be fully functional, and the amount of capital needed to really build, say, 10 test units that we can really start moving forward. To get there is a challenge that is sort of unique to developing things versus apps. Although apps can be expensive, it's really more about the work that the engineers put into it, testing and iterating and coding. We have aspects of that too with our app as well, but then we have to build something, and then we have to test to make sure it works. So it's certainly more difficult for us to get the capital that we need. But some of the ways we're trying to solve that, we're actually applying for a grant, a federal National Science Foundation grant. Hopefully, we're able to get that. Those are pretty challenging to get. And who is that? Who is that through? Because obviously we've talked about Indiegogo and Kickstarter and crowdfunding and crowdsourcing, but this is a whole other area in terms of developing things, or in this particular case, medical devices. What other areas are you looking into outside the norm to sort of get money? I mean, obviously grants. Can you talk to us a little bit about specifically those names and who you're actually looking at for those? Yeah, sure. So, and again, sort of the growing pains of being an entrepreneur. If I had known about the resources 6 months ago, it probably would have been even more helpful. But I do know about them now, which is great. So, and will be helpful to other people who are similarly situated, who are obviously 6 months to 9 months to 12 months
behind where you're at now, and so that's why this is very important, and one of the other reasons why I had you on.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's one of those things. At least for me, I always say, at the very least, I'll know these things for next time. Not saying that I want to fail, but it's always good to know that I know a lot more than I did before I started. So for me, there's these other opportunities through federal funds. So the National Science Foundation has funds through what's called the Small Business Innovation Research Program. And actually there are several agencies that are part of the SBIR funding process. So if you're Department of Agriculture, Department of Engineering, Department of Defense, National Institute of Health, National Science Foundation, for example, all of these have funds for small businesses that want to develop new technologies. It's a pretty challenging process because you have to have a lot of technical understanding. So fortunately, my team, I have engineers, biomedical engineers who are very tech savvy and understand that space from a development perspective and what really is new about the technology, so that if an engineer read it, they would really understand. And
who would help you? Who would actually help you then write the grants themselves? Because isn't that a challenge for you as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So we actually are trying to leverage in Pennsylvania. There's this innovation partnership program, and it's sponsored by the Small Business Association. And what they do is
and what is it called?
Yeah, it's called the Innovation Partnership.
Okay.
Through the Small Business Association, and essentially what they do is if you're interested in developing a technology and using funds through the National Science Foundation or through a small business innovation research grant, and they like your idea, they'll actually provide you with resources through which they'll help you write the grant. They'll help you actually develop a pre-proposal so that they really understand what the key components of your technology are and how your team will actually be able to develop it and what's the potential commercialization of it. So they actually they bring you through a lot of the steps of a business plan, but it's a little bit more elaborate and a little bit more technology focused. And what they'll do is they'll then put you in touch with an individual to actually write the grant if you need that help, and actually give you a voucher, a little bit of a stipend to actually write that grant as well. And then you go through the process of submitting it to the SBIR agencies.
This has been really thoroughly interesting. I know that there's going to be a lot of interest that other people are going to have, not only in your business and your technology and what you're trying to do and achieve, but I know that there's a lot of people out there that are going to get a lot out of learning from the steps that are needed in order to, build up and start up this type of company. The Fast Pitch Round will be sponsored by Audible, and we learn more about our guests' favorite books and my favorites back at my book club. Go over to mitchellchadro.com/audible. In the Fast Pitch Round, I cover many fun questions to help us learn more about our guests, their favorite books, their quotes, heroes, their favorite apps, the resources that they recommend for under $100, what contributes most to their success, and some bad advice that's actually being given to entrepreneurs. The reason why I chose Audible to sponsor my Fast Pitch Round, that's easy. I love books, and Audible is owned by a powerful company, Amazon, that stands behind all their products. Audible was willing to offer an exclusive free 30-day trial to my podcast listeners with one free audiobook download. If any listener doesn't like their book, Audible will exchange it for you, and you can cancel at any time. Audible allows you to keep your free download, and you can choose from over 180,000 bestsellers, new releases, classics, and more. I recommend The Last Lecture by Randy Posh. So dream big, get inspired, and listen up. Go on over to mitchellchadro.com/audible. So, I read a lot of books. I'm sure you do as well. Can you tell us a book that has really, inspired you or motivated you in business, family, or life that you think other people would gain something from?
Yeah, so for me, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho always comes to mind as one of my favorite books because it is something that you can relate to business, but really more so the journey of life. And, just as a quick synopsis, the general idea of the book was, this individual, he goes on a journey to try and find a treasure across the land, right? Across the desert. And that's his whole motivation, is he wants to change the life he has as a shepherd, on a farm, to be more of this luxurious life and become rich and famous and whatnot. And he goes on this journey, and what he realizes at the end of the journey is it actually brings him directly back to where he was before. And it's really kind of the sentiment is, it's not necessarily about where you get, it's about how you get there and the experience of doing that. So I always try and keep that in mind as far as when I'm doing the work for Strados Labs. Is I do certainly want this to be an innovation that impacts the lives of millions of people across the world and helps improve the quality of life for people who have asthma. But it's really about the journey. It's really about how I go about doing this and what I've learned from it, and hopefully what I can help people with, even if it doesn't get to the place that I want it to be. So, that's certainly a book that always comes to mind.
What are three things that you want people to sort of take away from today's show, the interview that we're having right now, that that will resonate with them when they come out of the show?
The first one is really, don't be afraid to ask questions. Even if you're a new entrepreneur, even if you don't have a great idea, just ask people. Just talk to people about your idea. Don't be afraid. I think a lot of times people get caught up in, signing NDAs and, being really secretive about what they're doing, but nobody will ever know what you're doing unless you talk to them about it. And your idea will probably get better and stronger if you do talk to people who have experiences that you don't have. So I think that's one.
Yeah. How about number two?
Number two is focus on who you're working with. So a lot of people, they want to work with their friends, and I was actually talking to my friend yesterday. He said, all I want to do is I want to make a lot of money, and I want to work with my friends doing it. And my first thought was, you probably don't want to do that because you're probably never going to be friends with that person again if you start working with them. So be really careful about who you work with and who you're forming a team around, and make sure that you have aligning passions. And although they might have the technology or the technological or skill set that you need, they might not align with how you're thinking. So really focus on the person behind the skill set.
And your third?
I just have fun. I have had just the most fun doing this entire project. I still call it a project, although it's now been a company. You got to look back and you got to realize that it's a lot of fun. It's a really exciting journey. It will be certainly risky to do it, but there are ways to do it smart. So you don't have to give everything up to start, but definitely have fun.
It's interesting, and by the way, very, very good advice, and I know that everybody out there is listening up to what you just said, because there's a lot of wisdom and a lot of value that was just provided by you to the audience, and so we want to thank you for that. We work with a number of sponsors. That's why I asked, in terms of have you incorporated? So right now you obviously have other co-founders. Have you incorporated this business? Is it? Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So we have incorporated, and we're a LLC in the state of Delaware, but we operate out of Pennsylvania. And so we're in one of the incubator spaces up at Temple. They have a small business development center, so we do some co-working space out of Temple. But, yeah, we're an LLC in Delaware.
And so the reason being is that I know that there's a lot of people in the audience who want to learn more about LLCs, S corporations, C corporations, nonprofits, starting them up, what's right for them. And, I went to your website, and we're going to ask how we can obviously stay in contact with you in terms of, what you need to focus on right now. It might not be developing a website and sort of, working on a blog and articles and newsletters, but there's a lot of people that obviously need that type of help. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so we've certainly thought about it, and we have some resources there. So I'm sure if you've seen the website, you certainly see that it's simple, and for us it works for now, because we're not quite selling the product yet. We're not a service online yet, really. So for us, it works. It's okay.
Have you ever heard of a company called Snappa? So Snappa?
I actually was on the radio blog earlier today, and I was listening to that one. So I haven't looked into them yet, but I did hear about them through your show.
Yeah, well, no, that's great. So I actually partnered up with Snappa with Christopher Gimmer, who's one of the co-founders of Snappa, and so the reason being is that a lot of our audience members need to not only create and start a website, but they want to obviously have graphics that are not only aesthetically pleasing and beautiful, but that are easy so that they don't have to basically hire a graphic designer. I mean, obviously, I'm not a designer, and I need help, and I need something that's going to allow me to save time, and yet it's going to have pre-made templates for me for my blogs, for my ads, for my articles. So again, it's Snappa, and so if people go over to mitchellchadro.com/Snappa, SNAPPA, they can, for free, they can start up, and of course there's paid plans there as well, but I recommend that people, check it out. And then also, the show is on iTunes, it's on Google Play, it's on Stitcher, it's on TuneIn Radio. And if people go over to mitchellchadro.com/iTunes, they can actually leave not only a review, but a written review, and it takes about 2 minutes. It's very helpful, and it allows people to basically find us, and it allows other people in the audience to find us as well. Nicholas, I'd really like to thank you so very much for being on the show. This has been terrific, and we just want to thank you so much. We look forward to seeing the progress that you're going to be making this important solution for asthma.
Yeah, thanks again, Mitchell. I really appreciate the time, and always happy to talk about being an entrepreneur, and especially about our work here at Strados Labs. So it's really exciting. So thanks again for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. How can people then keep in touch and look at the progress that you're making?
Sure. So if you want, go to www.stradoslabs.net. That's our website. Right now we have just a splash page of what the product looks like. So if you want a little bit more information about that, we also have information about the team, the other folks that I work with, and then we actually have a blog as well. So I do some blog work where I talk about topics in healthcare specifically, and then also things that are related to asthma management to help people who also have asthma. So if you're interested, feel free. It's www.stradoslab.net. So that's the easiest way to get in contact.
Nicholas, it's been a blast. Thanks again. We really appreciate it. And then until next show, take care, everyone.
Thanks.
In closing, let me ask for my listeners' help. First, please subscribe to my email list at mitchellchadro.com/signup. You will get all the full interview transcripts, my ebook, 30 Tools to Start Up, where I talk about these free resources in show 006. You'll get the startup checklist, education and training materials, and other resources just by signing up at mitchellchadro.com/signup. Listen up, trusted friends. It's your business, it's your family, it's your life. Go out and live it. Back at mitchellchadro.com/signup, help me boost the rankings of the Listen Up Show, the Startup Entrepreneur Podcast, by providing a well-written review in iTunes. mitchellchadro.com/iTunes. It helps other people find the show. If you actually need instructions on how to do this, you can find that back at mitchellchadro.com/signup. Thank you so much for subscribing to my email list and providing a written review on iTunes. Until next time.